All right, well, hello and welcome everybody to our September Fuse Info session. My name is Ryan Smith. I'm the director of the fellowship using the Science of Engagement here at UT Austin. And we do these every month, really as a background of our program, give you a chance to learn a little bit about the basics, how your teachers or you might join this probably not this school year, but the coming school year. Hopefully spark some interest, and then we can follow up after our time together today. If there is, you see some connections, see some different things where this could help support your work, supporting students on your campuses or in your districts. I'm joined by a couple people on our team that I want to just introduce really quick before we jump into the show. But one of them is Ms. Catherine Yonda. She's our partnership coordinator, and she would help shepherd all of us through the logistical and the financial parts of joining Fuse. She'll be here to answer questions along the way as well. And then the other person on our team wanted to introduce really quick. You're going to hear from her more later in our presentation this morning, is Christian Langford. Say hello, Christian. She is one of our wonderful Fuse facilitators, one of the folks that works directly with teachers in the program, a math teacher, and been with us for several years, working through the Science of Engagement and how we support our teachers across, mainly in Texas, but across the entire country and Western Europe at this point as well. So like I said, we're going to share a few things this morning. If you have any questions at all or want to contribute, add them to the chat. We're streaming in multiple places this morning. We're going live on LinkedIn, live on Substack, as well as live on YouTube. Each one of those should have a chat option. So if you have questions, you can put it in the chat on whichever platform you're watching, and they'll all come to us here in our central headquarters this morning. And like I said, always happy to follow up one-on-one meetings, anything like that, to answer more questions as well. All right, so I'm going to jump us in then to just a brief background. We want to share just kind of who we are, where we come from, how we could be, I think, a good connection to maybe some of the work that you have going on already in your professional learning initiatives and systems within your campuses or school districts. But the fellowship using the Science of Engagement, it's really a partnership between the University of Texas at Austin and classroom teachers, like I said, across the United States and at this point, Western Europe, but we're ready to expand beyond there as well. And who we are is we're part of the Behavioral Science and Policy Institute here at UT, but we work very closely with different education partners here at the university as well. to use a lot of the adolescent development, motivational science, cognitive science, science of learning, to help support teachers when they are engaging with young people. And our work over the last several years has shown, great results in improvement in not only student performance, but also in teacher self-reported well-being and desire to stay in the profession and feeling more valued, both on the student side and the teacher side. So that's something we're really proud of in our program, is that not only are our results showing an improvement in student outcomes, but also in, like I said, in teacher well-being as well. So going to give a few brief backgrounds on our program, kind of who we are, what we're about, then get some nuts and bolts and answer any questions that you might have along the way. So some common questions that we always get when either myself or others on our team share about our program across our networks. Questions we get from teachers, from parents, from anybody, is what do I do with someone who's just not motivated? So I talk to a lot of teachers where they feel like students, they have all these great systems in place. They want what's best for kids, but they feel like there's just that apathetic nature there. How can I give them the same, whether a child or students, that same level of urgency and drive that I had? And very much what we talk about and teachers learn in the program is that young people haven't changed all that much. They seem like they have over the centuries, really. But we do have a better understanding as adults now of really kind of what makes them tick biologically, especially during certain portions of their life, and how we can actually fine tune our language around some potentially stressful situations in the classroom and make it more likely that they will feel status and respect, which I'm going to talk a little bit more here about in a minute. That's what I say is this generation of young people truly unique. As I was in high school in the early 90s. So, not that long ago, it feels like, even though we've got a 30-year reunion coming up here shortly. But I think whether it's a Gen Z student, Gen Alpha student, a lot of the ideas that we're starting to promote, with teachers across the country are really helping them not think about their students differently, but you craft their language in ways that will help them tune into some of those biological things that they have going on already. We talk a lot about screens. There's always a lot of talk about, banning cell phones in classrooms, social media use from students, and whole questions, are screens ruining kids' lives? So that comes up a lot. We talk about that. Obviously, distractions are always a detriment. We're trying to learn something new. But we really try to move beyond, what could be seen as a quick fix, by taking phones out of a classroom. Yeah, that might help improve engagement. But is that really going that next step of yes, we've taken that distraction away, but how can we actually improve the potential that a student's going to feel more comfortable raising their hand and asking for help, or coming in for tutoring, or wanting to revise that essay, or come in to take that second attempt on a test? And then that final question, how can I balance letting them make mistakes with the need to set them on the right path? So one of our practices is called collaborative troubleshooting, where we work with teachers specifically on how do you kind of thread that needle of keeping a adolescent engaged, with the learning, but not going too far by giving them the answer and potentially making them feel condescended to or disrespected, but at the same time, not giving them any supports. So they have that perception that the demands that we're putting on them, that high level of rigor that we have, that they don't have a level of support that meets that equivalently. So it's really, we talk a lot about how we can frame our language to help, like I said, meet that sweet spot where students do feel valued and respected, but are also pushed, and we keep that rigor very high. So just a quick background on our fellowship and kind of our origin story. So our lead Fuse scientific director is a professor here at the University of Texas at Austin named Dr. David Yeager. You might be familiar with his work. He published a book about a year ago called 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Young People. He's been traveling the country, giving talks at different campuses, and really helping, I think, teachers get that better understanding of some of the opportunities that come with adolescent development, with puberty, with some of the things that we might have shied away from or wanted to work around in the past, and how we can use that to our advantage. And he was one of the lead grad students of Carol Dweck, Dr. Carol Dweck at Stanford. Most of you are probably familiar with her. She wrote the book Mindset. Has really been a leader in the national conversation about motivation and about mindset development. And they have worked together to do the research across the country on how we can improve motivation and engagement in specifically secondary math classrooms, but they're applicable in other classrooms as well. And then to bring in really the math piece, we work closely with Dr. Uri Treisman, also here at UT Austin. He's the founder of the Dana Center, really a legendary calculus professor here at UT. And really what he's most well known for is the ability to take students from across Texas who come from very different backgrounds when it comes to their experience with advanced math classes like calculus, and bring them into a setting at the university where that level of rigor can stay extremely high, but the perception of that support, it matches that level of rigor. So UT Austin has a top 5% automatic enrollment policy for any Texas senior in high school. So, but we're a very big and diverse state. So you've got students coming from campuses where they had a very robust calculus experience. Some of our urban districts and larger suburban districts that have, thousands and thousands of students. So there's more opportunities to be in some of those classes in a very rigorous area. And we have other students who might have come from very small districts who maybe they only had a virtual experience with calculus, and they didn't have that same level of rigor in high school. But he's able to bring them all to UT and then create, like I said, create that level of perception of support where he keeps the rigor very high. And we can also, again, make students feel that the level of support matches that. And then finally, the On-Ramps program here at UT as well is a dual enrollment program where students get college credit and high school credit at the same time. And what we did was we took some of the high-flying outlier teachers in that On-Ramps program. So teachers whose students were performing much higher than their peers on AP exams, and brought them all together at UT with Dr. Yeager, Dr. Dweck, Dr. Treisman, and these teachers to really dive deep into how are you talking to your students about mistakes? How are you talking about grades and assessments? How are you, able to motivate young people in your classroom that we might not be seeing in another classroom? And taking all that knowledge together in the research, building a program is what we've done with Fuse. So we can take that research, take it away from just being in journals and presentations at conferences, and really create a set of practices and a professional development platform where teachers can engage with and then implement in their classes. So backing up just a little bit. So we talk a lot in Fuse about this adolescent predicament, right? That there's never a point in our lives as humans, where we are more tuned to seek status, and at the same time, more tuned to not want to be embarrassed. So if you think about, if you can think back to when you were a teenager, there's never a point in your life probably where it felt more gratifying to have like affection reciprocated. Take that chance to ask somebody to a dance or try to hold somebody's hand for the first time. And if that is reciprocated, there's probably some memory burn going on right there that you remember how good that felt, how gratifying, and how understood kind of what your place was in your group. And at the same time, there's never a time in life where feeling diminished, feeling disrespected, feeling like you weren't being valued also has such a lasting imprint. And what we talk about with our teachers in Fuse is that is a part of our biology. The purpose of that is as testosterone starts to grow in our bodies and as we start going through puberty, that's the time in our lives where we do have to start proving our value to our tribe and to our network and our community. That's where the expectations on us to be contributors, starts growing so much more. And if we're a 16, 17-year-old and we're, back in the olden days when we were hunters and gatherers, if we weren't already at that point contributing, to our group and had a place and had a value and had an identity, then we were likely to be shunned or not supported. Much more so than if you're like a first or second grader. There's not that level of expectation. But as you advance in age and you get to middle school and high school, that level of expectation of our contribution grows. And that sounds like maybe a big way to look at it, but we take that large look at development and think about how it plays out in, say, a math classroom or a science classroom, and how just a few things that we might say as adults that can be misinterpreted as a student can lead us to feeling that we're being ostracized, or my teacher is disappointed in me because of something he or she said, versus my teacher just was trying to help me with a math problem. So we get down into those weeds about how to really take advantage of this point in adolescence where we can tune into that. So kind of 100 years of adolescent development, in one slide. Like, we know that teenagers' brains and hormones make them hypersensitive about status. And I didn't go into all the detail on the science here, but with your teachers and in our fellowship, one of the first things they get is a deep dive into the science from Dr. Yeager. We talk about, testosterone development, different hormones that are also growing in bodies of adolescents, and why that makes them hypersensitive about that status and respect, and how we look to others and how we feel about ourselves. And that sensitivity, how that enhances a fear of failure in the classroom, right? That how it makes us more hesitant to take that chance, to raise our hand, to ask for help. But our real push and our kind of theory of change is that if we can flip the way we look at that as adults, to not see that as a fear of failure, of something we need to work around, but it's not all bad. It helps our young people transition to adulthood successfully. So with that understanding, it's really possible to harness it and use it to promote deeper engagement and learning. So really stopping fearing adolescent development, start harnessing it. And the ways that we promote harnessing it are taking a deep dive in how we talk about key points in a classroom, how we talk about mistakes, how we talk about grades, how we talk about struggle and stress and assessments. Whatever subject we're teaching, thinking through how we frame our language around some of these key points, where a young person's either going to decide this is not a safe place to ask for help and raise my hand because maybe through no ill intent on the part of my teacher, I may feel like I've been diminished, called out to, condescended, disrespected, when that was never the teacher's intention. But how can we reframe again that language and tap into that seeking of status and respect? So real quick, just want to give a glimpse into some of the curriculum that teachers engage with in our program. So the way they learn the practices is really a mix of some reading, like I said, some like college level curriculum, and look into adolescent development and the ways that cognitive science works and motivational science, and then doing activities around how does this actually look in a classroom. But like I said, the adolescent hormone piece is a big one that we talk a lot about. That spike in testosterone in adolescence regarding of gender, that drives that hypersensitivity to signs of social status and respect. And then signs of respect from teachers help adolescents feel that they are on track towards becoming adults, and this feeling of respect is highly rewarding to them. So we oftentimes have programs on campuses that are culture building programs that are seeking to build a strong sense of belonging, things like that on campuses and in organizations. And where we try to differentiate is that, like, we think all that is very important. We need to know kids' names, obviously, shaking hands at the door, creating a safe place. But when you actually get to your instruction, when you get to diving into a difficult concept where we know that making mistakes is a natural part of it, that's really the point where you're either going to get a young person to completely lean in, feel respected, rise to that challenge, or potentially turn that off and decide that it's not a place where I want to take that chance. They're going to take those chances somewhere. They might be outside the classroom. We would like to see them take those chances within the classroom, because we know that's how they learn best. Hypersensitivity, we've already talked about this a little bit. To respect, completely innocuous interactions that most adults wouldn't think twice about can be interpreted as signs that we don't respect them or take them seriously. So Christian's going to talk a little bit in a few slides about one of our particular practices, about how often we, as adults, might say something like, "Don't you remember we did this last week?" with no ill intent, but the way that can be misinterpreted by a student can veer them off that track of wanting to be engaged and feel like a sense of belonging or at ease in a difficult classroom, in a rigorous classroom. Like I said, adolescents hypersensitive to respect presents us with an opportunity. Just small demonstrations of respect is that powerful tool. And that small demonstration of respect, if we can make sure that happens in a moment where we know a student is potentially going to have to take that risk, then that's where you're going to get an outsized benefit to that interaction. So yeah, it's great to show respect in a safe place, like coming into a classroom or in the hallway. But if you can also do that in that moment of struggle, when they're in the midst of engaging with content or engaging with an assessment or some kind of project that is very difficult, that's where we're going to have the most impact on their development, their view of themselves. So we talk a lot about math. Most of our teachers are math teachers, but we also have teachers from other subjects. Any time that a student might suspect that their teacher doesn't think they have that potential to learn and improve, they may conclude that the teacher doesn't see them as worthwhile investment of time and energy to teach. So again, always coming back to finding those opportunities where we can prove to our young people that we do see their value and their potential to keep them engaged with those. And then finally, framing challenge is a desirable part of that learning process. One of our first practices we do with teachers is also called a culture of learning speech, where they go into depth over talking through how they view challenge, how they view stress, how they view those butterflies you might feel in your stomach before you're about to do something challenging, and how we can use those to our advantage and not try to repress them or move away from that feeling. The perception of classrooms. So that's a key point that we talk a lot within our program as well. So our set of practices that teachers learn over the course of the fellowship are all designed and meant to move a student's perception. Again, we talk a lot about perception from a culture of compliance to a culture of learning. So I don't think any teacher would ever say a student comes up to them with an assignment or a test that they didn't feel like they did their best on, and they want to get some help or they want to redo it. I don't think anybody would ever say, go try harder alone. But again, it's a perception that we've built up, in our environment, that's the self-talk. If that's what a student is perceiving as the level of support in that classroom, and they're going to stay in that zone of feeling this is a culture of compliance, not a culture of learning. So our work is using these key perceptions to help young people see it as a respectful culture of learning classroom. And again, what we do is we use a lot of not only the research, but actually practical kind of behavioral science to help reframe that perception again. And then the last piece that I wanted to talk about before we get into some of the nuts and bolts of what the fellowship actually looks like for your teachers is we spend also a lot of time talking about how we can influence how a young person enters into a potentially stressful situation. So when they're about to take an exam, when they're about to engage with new content in a math classroom. And if we can create that culture of learning where the feeling is that the level of resources and that level of support matches the high demands, then they're going to enter that with the type of response and the type of seeking of a challenge that we're hoping. So what we see in the research is that if there is not a perceived level of support that matches the rigor that we've set, then they're going to enter that situation with a threat type response, right? So if there's a mismatch in that perception, the self-talk is I can't do this, blood actually rushes through the center of our bodies, cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down, there's more anxiety, worse performance. So we need to do everything we can to help them feel and see and value that the level of resources matches that demand. That's what we learned so much from Dr. Treisman, is that he would never lower the demands, lower the rigor in his class. But he worked so hard to create that perception of the resources. And the resources might have always been there, but if the students don't perceive them to match those high demands, then we're going to be at a mismatch. So if we can create that environment where they feel that those demands, the resources are there, then it's I can do this. Blood does not rush to the center of our body. It stays dilated like the way we want it to be. Cortisol stays low, testosterone goes up, less anxiety, better performance. And then really just three ways that we look at it often, we enter into one of those, our classrooms, is we have that culture of compliance where students do feel under threat, that the demands are high. It's a rigorous classroom, but the perception of those supports don't match it. We're going to have that threat type response. We're not going to feel like it's a safe place. Now we could lower our demands, lower the rigor, lower the expectation to match that lower level of resources, but nobody wants that either. We don't want an apathetic environment where nobody's learning anything. So the way that we meet the increased demands and create that culture of learning, again, is to match that level of support. And how do we do that with Infuse? Maintaining those high demanding standards, students owning their thinking. We talk a lot about how they revisit mistakes and how we as adults talk about those mistakes, interrogating those misconceptions, collaboratively troubleshooting together. Everybody has their own retest revision policies. We talk a lot about how do you frame them with your language? How do you talk about them? How do you make sure that you have those chances for students to come back to? And then really helping the students reframe their own idea of stress and their own idea that stress is always a bad thing, and how they can really reframe that mindset to better understand that because I feel that level of stress doesn't mean there's something wrong with me, and I have agency over how I'm going to respond to it. So that's a little bit of the background. And now we want to talk a little bit about the actual structure of the fellowship, what it looks like for teachers, how they're able to engage with the research in a practical way and implement different ideas in their classrooms. So we base everything around really two key concepts. One is that culture of learning that I've spoken about. How can we align our communication and our policies and procedures and our beliefs and values? So how do we as the adults talk about our grading policies? How do we talk about assessments? And are our policies aligned with how we're communicating them? Because everybody knows, like, a teenager is the world's greatest hypocrisy detector. So if we're saying one thing about how we value mistakes as part of learning in a classroom, and yet we don't have opportunities to redo an assignment or a test, or it's not an easy process to follow, or there's a perception that that's a sign of weakness or a sign of a deficit, then I'm going to see that hypocrisy. I'm not going to take advantage of it. So one whole set of the things teachers learn is around building that culture of learning, building that sense of the level of resources matching the demands. Then the other is really talking a lot about cognitive science, the engaged brain. And when we do practices like spiraling content, how are we communicating to our students why we spiral content? So of course we want to revisit material. We want to space practice out in different ways. But if we don't communicate to our students why we're bringing this content back, and that's because it's how your brain works and how memories are stored better, so we're more likely to perform on an assessment that's maybe 2 weeks later from where I first learned something. If I don't explain why I'm doing that, and my students see that I'm just teaching the same thing that I taught before, they're going to think, or they might think, that I thought they weren't paying attention last time. And then I'm moving it from just making mistakes as a regular part of learning something to my teacher's disappointed in me because he or she thinks I wasn't paying attention. So really two kind of big buckets for the curriculum that teachers learn: culture of learning and the engaged brain. It's broken up into 10 different practices that teachers learn over 2 years. On our website, we've got some snippets of each of them that you can dive into and look through what each of the practices actually look like. Teachers engage with these, and they do activities with other teachers in the fellowship of how does this look in your classroom? What are some activities, ideas, units that you've done to help with these as well? So there's a lot of sharing that goes on within the fellowship as well. And what I'd like to do then now, since we do have Christian here with us today, one of our wonderful Fuse facilitators, is just give her an opportunity to talk briefly about one of our practices, share her insights on what she sees from teachers in the fellowship when she's coaching about this practice and when she's first introducing it. So Christian, do you want to take it from there?
Of course. Hello, everyone. Well, one of the practices that I have the opportunity to present to teachers and just to share out is reframing mistakes. And as Ryan has already mentioned, it's a lot about like the things that we say and what do we mean? And then along with that, it's like, what do we want our students to interpret from what we're saying? And with Fuse, all teachers get the time, which is the most important piece, the time to actually like sit with the things that we do, our processes, and kind of think of, what are we saying and how are we putting this out there to our students to make sure that they are fully engaged. So with reframing mistakes, one thing that I have found as a teacher, I've taught for 14 years, and being a part of Fuse allowed me to kind of reflect on some of the things that I've actually said and done in my classroom. And I was able to see the disconnect. And I had the opportunity to share with many teachers about how, I'm Miss Langford and then I'm also Coach Langford, but I was getting two different outcomes from the same student from when I was coaching track and then also teaching Algebra 1 in the classroom. And basically it came down to what I said. So with reframing mistakes, I was able to look at and see, like at the start of my class, I was saying things that were actually deterring my students from learning. It was things that were actually kind of shutting them down. And Ryan had mentioned one thing that could have been said, and it's as simple as, hey guys, you remember this? We did this already. One thing that I was saying a lot of times with warm-ups was even, this one's easy, guys. This one's not going to take y'all very much time. Y'all got this. And it wasn't that I was trying to rush my students or make my students feel dumb in any way at all. But it was just, I wanted to reassure them, but that wasn't what was actually coming across. So my students were probably interpreting it completely different from what I was trying to get across to them. Let's see, can I move forward in the slides? Next slide. Okay, there we go. Thank you. So on here, it's this one right here. This is an easy one. And so what we're allowing teachers to do is we're allowing teachers to be able to think about, what do you want to come across to your students? And then how are they actually interpreting what you're saying? And is there a disconnect? And so by us working through these different activities that all go along with all of the different practices, teachers get the opportunity to sit with it and actually like dissect the things that they were saying to get the increased engagement that they're wanting in class. So me as a teacher, when I'm saying this, I want to encourage my students to show them what they already know. But my student could be sitting there saying, well, this isn't an easy one for me. You're surely not talking to me because I don't get it. Students might feel dumb and anxious about not knowing how to work it. Students might think the teacher's obviously, as I said, not talking to them. And a different approach could be what's on the very bottom of the screen right here. So I could have said instead, look back at your notes from yesterday to help you get a start on the problem. You'll notice that there are problems that are very similar that can guide you if you're stuck. Get as far as you can, then we can discuss, where everyone is missing that one little piece. It's a chance for me to see what the students know and don't know. Now, this activity is something that our teachers actually get to do. They get the opportunity to kind of go through this. It's not all given to them. This is an example of something that I've said, but teachers are also going to be able to think of, when I say this, what are my students thinking? Because when I said this to my class, nothing came from it. And so they get to sit with this, and then they get to share out with other teachers to see if they are commonalities, or if maybe they just can't really figure out another way to formulate this phrase to get the outcome that they actually want. Can we move to the next slide? So I have a quote here. This is our beautiful team, but on here it says, Fuse was designed so teachers have the library of resources and the network of colleagues and the dedicated amount of time to think carefully about how we would, I'm covering myself on here, dedicated time to think carefully about how they would like to use this important science. Okay, there you go. I couldn't see. But yeah, that is key and that is crucial. The time that teachers get to actually be able to do something that no other program has allowed them to do. It's not going to be a PD where teachers are going to be given, it's like something else to go and do because what they're doing isn't working. No, teachers already have so much valuable resources and things they are doing, but how is it coming across to the students? Do they have a chance to actually tweak the communication so the students are taking in what they're trying to get out? And Fuse is a valuable opportunity for all the teachers to be able to, actually get dirty, be vulnerable, be transparent with other teachers, and express, the common issue is the engagement piece. And this is kind of like that link between our teachers and our students, just to get our students to actually understand what we're trying to put down for them. We also have an opportunity to sit with teachers during our sessions. We have our virtual coaching sessions where we will have conversations with our teachers. And it's kind of like a checkpoint to see, how is it going? Bring to us what you've done. And now you get to have a conversation with teachers from different districts in Texas. As Ryan said, now we have international schools that we are also able to communicate with. But with us sitting there, we are learning from teachers, and we're actually there to kind of help guide with some of the communication pieces that are going on in their classroom, just to help to see how it's all going to be going on in their classroom. Please understand that with this, it's not going to happen like immediately, but as teachers continue to do this over time and over the year, there are going to be benefits to them and also their students.
All right, thank you, Christian. I'm going to keep you up here on the stage for the next few slides. Just might have some questions or want you to share your thoughts. Also, I just wanted to talk briefly about kind of what the structure of the fellowship looks like. So typically, if what you're hearing today, or through this video, if you're watching another time, resonates and you want to learn more, we just kind of scratch the surface, in our info sessions. We'd love to set up a time to talk individually about how, this work or anything else we might do could match up or align with other goals and visions you have for your teachers. But typically, teachers will sign up throughout the school year, and then we launch in the summer. So next summer, so it'd be summer of 2026, 2027, we'd have multiple options for them to start their fellowship. So we'll do an in-person events where they can come together, hear directly from Dr. Yeager. Christian will be there and others to meet other teachers in the fellowship, get some of that background science, do their first few practices, share resources, things like that. But we also have virtual and asynchronous options. So we know it's a big country. Everybody can't get together all the time. We have different time zones, different schedules. So everything we do is also available through our online platforms where we do synchronous sessions, asynchronous sessions. We're able to bring in a lot of exceptional, well-known, renowned folks from not only UT Austin, but others in the world of adolescent motivation and cognitive science to work with our teachers. So typically, if you have teachers who are going to attend in person, it's a 2.5-day event in the summer where, like I said, we get together and build that fellowship that will extend throughout the school year. And then once the school year starts, they do attend 4 virtual coaching sessions led by our facilitators. They're all virtual outside the school day. And I know we just did several of them this last week. So I don't know, Christian, if you could maybe share a couple insights from maybe some of the conversations that you've had with current fellows just over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was a great conversation that we've had this past week. Just having the opportunity to hear from teachers talking about, how beneficial it is in their classroom. I know there was a couple teachers that, one thought she wasn't doing a very good job. But then when I listened to her, and she basically was discussing how she has, I guess it's like it's 8th grade and Algebra 1 students in one class, and she felt like she didn't have the time to do some things. But then from listening to her, she was expressing to me like, I felt I didn't have the time to go over some of the mistakes they were making on one of their assessments. And then from us talking about it, she expressed like, what I did is I put one of the questions on the board that was the most missed. And she continued to say how, she was going through talking about the incorrect answers and why it was incorrect, but she was reaching out to the students and asking, why do you think so many students pick this one or this one or this one? But she was also explaining what reframing mistakes was. And it was interesting to hear her say, I'm not sure if I'm doing it correctly. And I was I told her, it sounds like nothing but positives, because that's exactly what we want for you to do. So you felt like you were in a time crunch, but what you created in this time crunch to help your students was exactly what we wanted to happen. The questions that she was asking to her students was increasing engagement. I noticed that she didn't automatically say anything like, guys, so many of y'all got this wrong, or why did you get this wrong? But instead, she was actually like breaking the problem down to allow her students to give them feedback, but also feel safe in seeing that I'm not the only one who missed this problem. There was a lot of us who got the incorrect answer. And then I gave her kudos, because a lot of times we were so hard on ourselves as teachers, but from what she had learned from Fuse and the time crunch she felt she was in, she actually created a great opportunity for engagement in her classroom.
Yeah, that's great. And like we've been saying, so much of what I think our teachers, when we talk to them, they've been in the fellowship for a little while. It's so much about just taking that chance to recraft the way you explain something or the way you engage with that moment of struggle with a student. Like, we don't have a different, like, we're not a pedagogical curriculum in the sense of like we're promoting a certain way to teach math or science or anything like that. But very much, how do you notice that moment of opportunity, in a classroom when somebody's made a mistake or somebody, needs to take that chance? And how can we just reframe that moment, that language, as the adult in the room can have such an outsized impact? And a lot of times we don't see it until we try it, because I know I do this with my own kids. I assume they know what I'm thinking, and they assume that I'm not thinking a negative, about some mistake they've made or something I'd like them to try again or do differently. But oftentimes teenagers do have they lean into a negative assumption. And if we're not being overly transparent as the adults into why we're saying what we're saying and what we are valuing from them, then we're going to live in that negativity. And then when we need them to try something hard the next time, they're going to be less likely to do it. And that the great data that we've seen, and I'll post our data slides that are on our website. I'll post that to everybody who's watching the video. Is that's what really leads to the teacher self-report of a better sense of well-being and desire to stay in the profession and try new things. Because when our students do start engaging and asking for help and taking that chance, then it's a better environment, not just for the students, but for the teachers as well. So great things happen in those coaching sessions. They're pretty low demand, on the teacher. Like, we don't ask them to put together presentations or anything like that. It's basically, come to this session, we're going to talk about one of the practices, and you're going to get to hear from a lot of your colleagues how they're attempting things and how they're trying different strategies and things like that. So really love our coaching meetings. It's a great part of the fellowship. So again, back to the structure. It's really based around a 2.5-day event in the summer. Teachers that do it virtually, they spread that time out. So it's the same kind of curriculum that they do and same work, but they spread it out over more time because they can kind of do it at their own pace if they have travel plans or they're teaching summer school, anything like that. And then there's 2 full-day virtual conferences that happen during the school year. So one in October, one in February, where they learn additional practices and then hear more from Dr. Yeager, more from our facilitators. Those are all virtual, just so teachers from around the country can all attend at the same time. And then just a few other kind of nuts and bolts about the structure of the fellowship itself. The kind of the third stool of Fuse. So you've got the fellowship, where teachers are engaging with each other. Heard some great feedback from a lot of the smaller schools and districts that have joined Fuse, as this really helps them build their network of colleagues who are working through the same dilemmas and puzzles that they are, can build that network. The deep dive into adolescent development science and the practices is like the second leg of the stool. And then the third is the student engagement modules. So the students in each of their classrooms take 3 modules as well throughout the year. And what these do is they teach the students about purpose, about anxiety, about mindset, and not anxiety in the sense of like a global anxiety, but more about instruction. When you feel that you're encountering a problem that you don't feel like you're ready to do, how can you lean into that more? How can you take advantage of that? And then how can you reframe that stress? So the third one they do is all about reframing stress, about how can I better understand that, like I said, those butterflies you feel in your stomach doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Doesn't mean you don't belong in that advanced class. It means that you're getting ready to do something challenging. Your body's excited about that. And it's a natural part of doing something that's important to you. And then we work with the teachers to make sure that as your students learn how to reframe their stress and that stress doesn't always have to be debilitating. It can be enhancing also, that we're using language as the adults that helps with that reframe. So we don't say things that I know I say and others might say when we don't think it all the way through. We say something like, just take a deep breath, or you don't need to feel that way, or you've got this. Things that we say because we want somebody to feel better. But it's so much more powerful rather than to try to get them to suppress that feeling that they have or discount it, to understand that that's an important feeling that they're having and that they should be feeling the way because this is a challenge and they can meet it and they can use that feeling they have to their advantage. So the 3 student modules they do, really great interventions for students to better understand learning, better understand their own cognitive development. And then we also ask the students some questions during those modules. And that's how we give teachers reports on that perception so they can see if they are building a culture of learning versus a culture of compliance. We ask student questions like, students in my class feel comfortable making a mistake. Students in my class feel comfortable raising their hand. My teacher believes all students can be successful. Then the teachers get 3 reports throughout the year that gives them some feedback, them some data to see if the way they're talking about stress and mistakes and exams is having an impact on the perception of their students. So students do 3 of those throughout the year. That's like the 3rd leg of the stool for Fuse. So that's a key point. Another point, we're always very happy about to share is that teachers in our fellowship for contributing to the learning of their colleagues and everybody else in the group, they earn $1,000 per year. We do charge for the fellowship. So if this is something that you're interested in, please reach out to me again. I'll give you ways to do that here in a moment. But there's a charge per teacher. But then out of that tuition that typically a district or a campus pays, the teacher gets $1,000 of that back directly from UT Austin. Couple last things before we'll sign off for today and see if anybody has any questions. Not sure how many folks are here live, but I know a lot of folks watch the recording, so you can send them our way. But we just launched this year also an executive leadership series. So Dr. Yeager, other folks on our team lead 4 different sessions throughout the year that take a lot of the same mentor mindset and engagement science practices that we teach teachers and how to communicate with young people, and then make them applicable to principals, assistant principals, other central office leaders, especially as you're coaching somebody maybe new to the profession or a young person in a new leadership role, and ways to coach them to engage with a frontline staff member or a new teacher in a way that you're going to get that most charitable response. What I mean by that is not have a misconception in the way that communication that you as the leader are delivering is interpreted negatively. So one example, and I'll also send a link to this last session that we did so everybody can see that video. We talked a lot about, this was near the beginning of the school year. So let's say you have a first year teacher, this is going to be his or her first like open house or back to school night or something like that. And you have some hesitation about what they might say, or if they might, create an environment with parents, where maybe the best intentions are not met, things like that. How to have that conversation with a young employee or staff member that will make it less likely that you'll come off as them thinking that you're assuming they're immature, or that they're not able to meet the high standard that you've set as the leader of your campus. So different ideas and strategies also on using kind of Fuse as a leadership role. And these are just included with any districts that join the fellowship. You get free access to all this additional learning and content as well. And our next one is actually with Stephanie Okamoto. So she's in the business world, but has worked closely with Dr. Yeager on the development of mentor mindset and Fuse and everything like that. She's actually used to be a leader at Microsoft and is now at ServiceNow. And we'll be talking with her on November 12th about how she uses like her skill set also to support those new frontline staff members and folks in her organization. A lot of things that are very applicable to education as well. And even if you haven't signed up for Fuse yet and just want to learn more or join this session, we put a link in the LinkedIn chat that you can sign up for that. We'll make sure you get on that invite. All right, just a couple last things before we sign off. Ways to continue to connect with us. So we're building out our Substack publications. So we've got posts that we put up there. I think this video is streaming there too. Honestly, today's the first day we're trying to stream in multiple places. So I know we're streaming good on LinkedIn, I think on YouTube, and hopefully Substack if anybody's watching there as well. But that's where we put out a lot of content, blog posts, different things to learn more about not only the fellowship itself, but also different ways to use adolescent motivational science and things like that in the classroom. So sign up for that. It'd be great to engage with you there. And then finally, if like what I talked about and Christian talked about today resonates with you, again, this was just a high level overview. We got a lot more nuts and bolts to talk about how this might fit into your plans, your district, your campus. Please reach out. There's our website as well as that QR code right there. You can schedule a meeting with me or somebody else on the team so we can really talk through potential next steps, and we'll follow up with that as well. All right. Well, that's what we had for today. I'll bring Catherine back up here to the stage as well. This is where we started. We'll put a bow on our time together today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll monitor the chats in our various places for a little while. See if anybody else has any questions. But if you're watching the recording, please reach out. We'd love to get to know you and learn more about how we can support the work on your campus or in your district.